awesome to hear where you guys are tuning in from. Thank you so much for being here. And today we're going to talk all about weight loss stalls. So I'd love to hear any questions that you guys have. We can go through any questions that you have about weight loss stalls on keto or carnivore too. Those are pretty much the areas that I'm most well researched in and knowledgeable in it from coaching and doing all this for the last several years and doing it for myself too. So I'd love to hear your questions. We can get going. Debbie, so I was high protein, lower fat, and I couldn't get lean. I started higher fat, lower protein, okay, and started getting lean again at 54 years old. I just don't want to lose muscle. So just to clarify, so you couldn't get lean on high protein, low fat, but on higher fat, low protein, you find you are getting lean? Is that what you're asking? And you're worried about losing muscle. That's a very legitimate thing to worry about. So that's great that you are getting lean with the higher fat, lower protein. I mean, it does work for a lot of people. My most successful program is the original 20-day challenge, which is all based on, keto macros. And it's time and time again, it's been the most successful one of all the different programs. And it's what, my book, all of it is based on those keto macros and those approaches. So I'm not surprised that you have started getting lean on that. I think that it's important that you make sure to get enough protein every day to make sure that you don't lose lean muscle. That's a real concern. It's an important concern, important thing to make sure you're getting enough protein. So I know that the daily recommended protein intake is about 0.8 times your weight in kilograms. So that's a minimum. I like the work and research done by Dr. Don Layman, Dr. Ted Naiman, which is closer to about 90 grams of protein per day for most people, somewhere between 90 to 140. But if you're calculating it for yourself individually, they really, like Dr. Don Layman always goes with about 90 grams of protein per person per day. So that would be, if you're having 3 meals a day, you would have 30 grams of protein at each meal. And if you're having 2 meals a day, then 40 grams of protein at each meal. And if you prioritize that, then you won't lose lean mass and you still won't, probably won't have any issues getting lean with that. So I don't know what exactly your protein intake is now. If you tell me, that'll probably help, but you don't need to worry about losing lean mass as long as you get that. We have a lot of protein turnover daily that happens in our cells. Somewhere between 200 to 300 grams of protein is turned over just in our cells every day. So you don't have to worry a lot about it, but if you want to make sure that you maintain your muscle, it's important, because we do lose muscle more and more. You're getting 60, 90 that's a great number. Yeah, I think you'll probably still see the same results that you're getting now, but let me know if you're over on Instagram, send me an update or let me know the next time we do a live how it's going. Okay, so let's see what the next question is here. Marianne Gray, can really low vitamin D cause a weight loss stall? It's possible. For me, I focus more on how iron can cause weight loss stalling because iron plays a critical role in our metabolism. I don't know that vitamin D necessarily does. I know it has so many different roles and it's a pro-hormone, and it has an incredible amount of different chemical reactions that it does in the body, but I don't think that it necessarily would cause a weight loss stall. So that would be my best guess on that. Helen, can we lose fat without losing weight? You can. I mean, I definitely have experienced that. I, gained 8 pounds of lean muscle and burnt off quite a bit of fat. I lost close to 20% body fat altogether in the last 6 years. And I can't say that my weight did change some, but in the last 2 years, my weight hasn't changed all that much. And yeah, I've still been burning tons of fat and gaining 8 pounds of lean mass. So That's why the scale is just so unreliable for, giving us progress, measuring our progress. It's just not a great measuring device because it doesn't measure our actual body composition. That's why I'm always talking about the body scans and how important they are, because it really doesn't tell us, how we're doing vis-a-vis our actual lean mass, muscle mass, and fat burning. And sometimes it says things that are kind of make you think incorrectly that you're gaining weight or that you're not doing the right thing, even though you're getting healthier because you're losing fat and you're gaining more muscle. So you absolutely can lose fat without losing weight, and I see it all the time. That's why I always recommend getting body scanning done, going by the fit of your clothing, taking measurements, because that's when you see those changes happening and you feel those changes happening is really when your clothing fits differently, and you can just see that clothing feels looser, it's not as tight. And also just by measuring yourself with a tape measure, you can see that, you're probably losing inches, even if the scale isn't moving. And I see it all the time, and it's so frustrating, for so many people, to see the scale go up when they're doing everything right and they're actually burning through a lot of fat and gaining muscle. So, all right, we'll go to the next question here. So Michelle, I know this is kind of personal, so no worries if you don't want to share. Have you had issues with your period since being keto, carnivore? I've lost mine and I can't seem to get it back. I'm high fat carnivore. I have not. I have stayed regular. I know that it's a very critical health marker, that our body will only have a cycle on a regular basis if the body's at homeostasis and it's healthy. I do remember at the very beginning when I first started keto that I had cycle changes. So my cycle had always been like every 28 days, and then it elongated, so it's like every 33, 34 days, and it kind of got longer, but I like that because it means the first 10 days of the cycle when estrogen's really high, and we feel amazing, we feel social, talkative, playful, like lighthearted, all those great emotions that come from all that high estrogen that helps us get old projects done and bring all this energy. I like to have that as long as possible. So I like that my cycle lengthened out, but I have heard of cycle either temporarily going away, and that can happen when someone does any kind of diet change. They can lose hair and they can have cycle disruptions with any kind of diet change. It doesn't matter if it's keto or low carb or high carb, low fat, or whatever it is. It's just a big change and adjustment for the body. But typically, if there's a loss of cycle, it can mean that there's not enough actual calories coming in. So if you could tell me how much you're eating in a day, if you know approximately what your caloric level is in a day and how much protein and fat you're eating being a high fat carnivore, that will help me answer the question. So Matthew Peterson, do you believe excess protein can be converted into fat? What are your opinions on calories in, calories out against the PE diet? So I don't really believe that excess protein can be converted into fat. So it is biochemically possible, but that doesn't mean that just because that pathway exists that it's going to actually, the body's actually going to do it. So just because the body can turn excess protein into fat doesn't mean that it would do it. It's a really expensive process biochemically for the body to do that. So it's not something that's probably going to happen for most people at any point. I think even if you're eating protein all day long, it's just really, really hard because it takes a lot of B vitamins to break protein down, and eventually, you'd just be doing that at such a cost to your body. So my opinion on calories in, calories out versus the PE diet, so doing like a 1-to-1 protein to fat and prioritizing protein, is that it's not all black and white. I think that it's calories in, calories out do play a factor, and at the end of the day, our bodies have caloric needs, and we burn so many calories in a day. And the food that we put in also, gets either utilized or wasted, like it does in ketosis. Sometimes we waste energy, we waste ketones. So there are a lot of other factors that are just not taken into account when you just look at calories in, calories out, because if you are burning fat, if your liver is making ketones, which are tiny pieces of fat from the fat that you're eating and from your body fat, then calories in, calories out doesn't apply as much. And also a lot of the information we have about calories is actually incorrect. So for example, we have a thermic effect that certain macronutrients have. The protein is the highest, has a thermic effect of 30%, around that. And then, carbs have the second highest thermic effect of food. Fat has the lowest, but so there's a calorie loss based on the thermogenic effect of those foods. And then there's also energy wasting that happens when the body makes ketones. The liver often overproduces ketones, especially at the beginning. And so we waste ketones and we breathe them out in acetone on our breath. And also we just tend to produce too many of them. So it's kind of a gray area. It's not one or the other, but I think that it's when you look at both. You look at calories in, calories out. You look at the thermic effect of food. You understand that the way calories are measured is not exactly how we utilize them. And then you also, take into account this other factor of ketone wasting, and then the hormonal signaling, the endocrine theory of weight loss, which is all about our hormones. We take that into account as well. So you have to have all of those things, and it's not one or the other. It's not black and white. It really is a factor. It is the result of all those different factors. So let me know if you have a follow-up question on that. So Michelle, Elizabeth, it's been gone for about a year, trying higher fats. I really don't want to add carbs. Can you tell me? You may have written it already. Okay, I'm going to just scroll down here real quick. So 135 grams of fat, 80 to 90 grams of protein, 1,800 to 2,000 calories. So that's a decent amount. Do you know what your activity level is? Are you very active? And what is your body fat percentage? Because the lower body fat percentage that a person is, that is when that becomes more of a risk factor for losing your cycle, your menses. Okay. Let's see here. So your body fat's 21 to 22%. And activity level, if you can tell me that too. Moderately active. I mean, you could try bumping up the fat if you really don't want to add carbs. Just do the fat higher up. Some people go up to 200 grams of fat per day and moderate the protein a little bit more if you're doing more keto macros. So you'd be at like closer to 170, 200 grams of fat per day and maybe closer to 60 grams of protein. You could do that, but I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with adding some carbohydrates. It's really important not to be dogmatic when it comes to following like keto and carnivore. And, you can still be in ketosis at under 20 grams of carb per day. So if you added in 10 or 20 grams of carb from the lowest starchy vegetables, like the green veggies, the ones that are lowest in starch, you added those in, and they're mostly just going to give you some fiber. If you don't have an issue with green vegetables, low starch vegetables, you could try adding some in and see if it makes a difference. I don't know. I mean, if you've been doing it for a year, it depends what your health goals are. I'm not sure what your health goals are, but if you have no issues with eating those kinds of low starch vegetables, it's really the high starch vegetables that are problematic, that can kick you out of ketosis. But you can easily stay in ketosis doing up to 20 grams total, not net, of carb per day. So, you could definitely try it out. I don't think that carbs are needed. They are non-essential, but that doesn't mean that, you can't have any of them. I like to have some as a treat on the weekend. There's some carbs also in non-fat yogurt, which I have sometimes as a after dinner dessert with some cinnamon, salad greens, those kinds of things. Most people who have issues with them should avoid them. Like if you have digestive issues with them, if you have mental health issues after eating those kinds of foods, then you should take them out. But there are situations where, and I was really skeptical about this for a long time, but I've spoken with many women who are, health coaches and counselors, and they've worked with women who've had issues with their cycle dysregulation, and just adding in like 40 grams of starchy carbs will make the difference for them in the week before their cycle, so the PMS week. It's made a difference for them. So yeah, if you have digestive issues, it's really frustrating, but maybe you can pick the ones that are not FODMAP. So if you look up the FODMAP vegetables, you'll see the ones that are the most difficult on our digestion. They include onion, broccoli, all the onion family, garlic, broccoli. You can see the full list of FODMAP foods, and if you look those up, you can see what are the low FODMAP foods, because those are the easiest to digest. So those would be where you might want to start. Or you could add in carbs in other ways, like doing yogurt, adding yogurt in, there's some carb in that. If you have like a serving of non-fat Greek yogurt or full-fat Greek yogurt or non-fat Greek yogurt, there's going to be carbs in that. So you could try going that route too if you don't want to add in vegetables. And if you do try the vegetable thing, then yeah, go for the ones that are low FODMAP. My pleasure. All right. So that was Debbie. You're going to bump it up to 90. Let me know how you go. You're welcome. Angela, is the fat to protein ratio different for 50 plus women? I'm not sure which ratio you're referring to. Are you referring to a 2-to-1 or a 1-to-1, or what specific ratio you're referring to? In general, I don't think it's different for women above 50. However, Dr. Don Lehman, I know, and Dr. Gabrielle Lyon always talk about how you have to eat more protein over the age of 40 even. You have to eat more protein because we need to eat more protein just to maintain muscle mass, let alone add muscle mass. So if you're looking to add muscle mass, you have to add even more than that. Marianne Gray, my iron is too low. Okay, thank you, you're welcome. SKUTZ15, can you talk about iodine's role in weight loss? So with iodine, I did an interview recently with Viveka Menegas from the Nourished Cavemen, and she talked about how sometimes fat loss is blocked because of toxicity. So if our liver is our main detoxification organ, as you guys all know, then we want to make sure that the liver is really well supported. And iodine plays a major role in the body in terms of supporting a lot of different organs and factors in our body. So it can help with detoxification. And if your goal is fat loss, I know that she was saying it's the first thing that she does for her clients is taking a look at adding in iodine. And one thing I've been concerned about is people eating all kinds of different types of non-iodized salts, that iodine is such a critical ion that we need to have. So if you are eating salts that are like non-traditional salts that you would get in the store, you might not have iodine added to it, and then you run the risk of having some iodine deficiency. So it can definitely help with that. Matthew Peterson, what do you believe is the optimal macro ratio to have the best body composition? Just whey, protein, and egg whites. High protein as possible, carbs and fat close to zero. So apparently, in order to have the absolute best body composition, you definitely want to make sure you're getting enough protein. And if you are working out a lot, you're doing weight training or resistance training, you're going to need to make sure you have a lot of protein. But there is research out there, Dr. Ben Bikman talked about it on our most recent podcast, that fats have a synergistic effect when it comes to protein. So I do think that minimizing your intake of energy, and especially foods that are high in fat and carb, is going to help have the best body composition possible, making sure that you're eating enough protein but not going over, sort of finding the right threshold for yourself where you feel good, you're getting enough protein, you know, and then working out and doing resistance exercise is going to be the best combination. But in terms of the optimal macro ratio, I know Dr. Ted Naiman says 1-to-1, or sorry, 1-to-1 protein and fat, gram per gram is the optimal ratio if you're looking for that. And you know, you can go leaner and experiment with that, or go less lean if you're not feeling really satiated. But adding fats in, you know, and doing keto macros can help keep protein like at a really good level to also get benefits of ketogenesis, where you're also wasting energy, you're wasting ketones potentially, and you're keeping insulin really nice and low, which also boosts the metabolism by about 300 calories per day. So fats, I think, should have a role. I wouldn't say going all protein, like 100% protein or 90%, or, you know, those levels of protein, just like whey protein shakes and egg whites, like you're saying. You're going to need to have some fat in there, and especially for the fat soluble vitamins too, and for proper hormone production, because our hormones are made from both sterols, fats like cholesterol. All of our sex hormones are made from sterols, from cholesterol, and also peptide-based hormones are made from protein. So we need to get lots of protein and fat in there as well. So I don't think ideal would be 100% all protein. All right, let's see. I'm gonna grab some water here. Let me know where you guys are tuning in from. Question here from Colleen about eating carnivore and wearing a CGM. All right, Colleen, I've been eating more carnivore lately and recently wore a CGM. I found my glucose levels were high, 90 to 105, and I was not in ketosis. Will this cause weight gain and stalls? Can you tell me what you're eating like macro-wise in a day, and if the glucose levels that you're talking about are in the morning or just other times of the day, because it makes a big difference. So most people, if you're wearing a CGM, you're getting levels all throughout the day, but your blood glucose at 90 to 105 is not high, like relatively, it's not a high number unless it's compared to something else. So like if your blood glucose was like 60 and then you had a meal and it went to 105, then it would be relatively high because it would go up by over 40 points after you eat. If your blood glucose is like 89 and then after you eat for 2 hours it's at 90 or 105, like it's barely moving. So, you know, I don't consider those numbers to be high. To me, high blood glucose would be waking up sort of at the level 110 every single day, and that being even higher than that, like after meals, like say 130, 140. When you get into the 120, 130, 140, 150, upper hundreds, 170, that to me is a high blood glucose. But I think that 90 and 105 are not high, and if that's a fasting number, it's pretty normal on carnivore with higher levels of protein, and it's because of how our body is breaking down the protein all the time, very slowly. But the important thing is that you're not having excursions, so the blood glucose isn't going really high or really low off. You're just staying in this very like stable range. And that's really where you want to be, because your body is making glucose for you from the protein that you're eating, but it's making it at a very like paced slow rate. So it's going to be doing it for 4 to 5 hours after you eat a meal. And then throughout the night, it's also going to be doing that in order to keep your brain alive. It's going to be making glucose. And so a lot of times people wake up with higher blood sugar in the morning, and it's because the liver was making glucose for you all night long to keep your brain online. And it's also making ketones as well. The brain also can utilize ketones, but people will see their blood sugar go up to like 100 while they're sleeping or in the night, and it's just because the brain has those demands for glucose in the night, and so glucagon is going to be putting that out from the liver. So it should not cause weight gain or stalling. If your goal is weight loss, then I wouldn't worry about it. If your goal is therapeutic ketosis or being in ketogenesis, then you might want to moderate your protein, do a higher fat approach. But for weight loss, I would not worry about ketones if you are doing a higher protein carnivore, because you're at 0 carb. So, you know, your body's not taking in any carbohydrate at all. You don't really need to worry about, you know, it blocking fat loss in any way. And yeah, it's not a concern. If you have a follow-up question on that, you can let me know. Matthew, what is your opinion on non-nutritive sweeteners in low-calorie drinks like Coke Zero and weight loss? I'm really not a big fan of them at all. I really try to get people to phase them out. I quit them about 3 years ago this month, actually. I still remember. It was May 3 years ago, and I quit them because they caused cravings for me, and they also disrupt the gut microbiome. So it's really important. Our gut microbiome makes a lot of our neurotransmitters and makes a lot of our, you know, serotonin and precursors for our good feeling, you know, neurotransmitters and chemicals. And non-nutritive sweeteners can also cause insulin to raise because of the cephalic phase insulin response. So, you know, there's a lot of reasons why I don't like those sweeteners, and I think there's other things in those drinks as well that could be negatives. They also tend to be difficult for people to quit. So people, if you're drinking like 3, 4 or more than that a day, sometimes people have 5, 6 in a day, then you're constantly putting your body in that fed state, even though you're not eating any food. And so you're never going into the post-absorptive state. You're always in the absorptive state. You're always in the fed state. You're never in the fasted state. And then that's what you want, you know, to have those phases circulating all the time, the fed and fasted state, so that you can break down and get in that catabolic state. Your body's breaking energy down and utilizing it. But if you're always in the fed state, you're always anabolic, then you're never going to be, you know, breaking down stored energy and utilizing it. So there's a lot of reasons why I'm not a fan of them, but, you know, I don't think they're the worst thing in the world, especially when, you know, there are some that are like keto friendly, stevia, and if you can use them, moderate them, they don't cause issues for you, just know that they might be raising insulin. And there are some of them in particular that really, really dysregulate the gut microbiome, including some of the artificial ones and natural ones too. So, alrighty, so just scrolling here to the next question. So Angela, how do women going through menopause lose fat or metabolism is slower? Well, keto is really wonderful for that. When your insulin is low, your metabolic rate is going to be higher. And it's been proven in ketosis that people's metabolic rate does go higher than that. Also, you know, I don't think it's necessarily always the case that the metabolism will slow down. A lot of women that I've worked with have actually gotten their cycles back and gone out of menopause when they went on a keto diet. And so sometimes there's just a premature perimenopause or menopause because of a high carb diet, because of the way they were eating. And so we often see that changes when people are on keto and carnivore. So it's something that you definitely, a lot of the women that I work with have told me my program is the only thing that's actually worked for them, the Ketogenic Girl 20-Day Challenge. after trying so many different things, and so many of those women are perimenopausal or menopausal, and I just don't think that it's something you should believe that your metabolism will slow down just because you are going through menopause. It's not necessarily the case. Elmari, hi from Alberta, Canada. Hello. All right, so Jesse L, what's your opinion on Ted Naiman's opinion that people with extra fat to lose should eat higher protein, lower fat, and lower calories? So I'm a big fan of Dr. Ted Naiman's. He has worked for many, many years with people who are obese, and he's gotten them really great results in terms of fat loss by putting them on his, protocol that he's developed over the years. And he's found that, if someone does have extra fat on the body, they should limit the amount of extra energy that they're taking in. And I think it's very logical. It makes a lot of sense. He does not say you should lower calories necessarily. That's not really the main point. The main point is just lower the high energy foods. Like if you have a lot of energy on your body, you want your body to utilize, then stay away from especially foods that are really high in fat and carb. Those are really high energy dense foods. And so, you're not going to burn your own energy as rapidly as you would like to if you're constantly taking in and eating foods, especially, that are low protein, high fat, and high carb. So I think, he has a really great approach on that. All right. Angela, you said more protein, less fat. I think that was in regards to your earlier question. But do you think like the macros should be different? I don't think they should be different. Generally, a 1-to-1 protein to fat is ideal. Nutrient dense enthusiast here from WI, is that Wisconsin? Sorry, I'm Canadian. I don't know all the state abbreviations. Helen, what about eating a 250-gram ribeye with avocado? It is the only one food you had in the day, plus maybe a coffee with coconut milk or similar. That doesn't sound very appealing to me. It sounds like a small amount of food, and I'm not a big fan of OMAD. If your calories get too low, then you run the risk of slowing your metabolism. So meal frequency being higher, eating twice or 3 times a day, you're going to have a greater thermic effect from especially the protein that you eat. So I just don't really like the 1 meal a day plan, because people either eat too much at one sitting or they don't eat enough at that one sitting. So, and then there's like a food fixation thing that happens where, people are thinking about food all day long because they're hungry and they're just doing the 1 meal a day. I know that's not the case for everyone, and some people really thrive on it and do really well. So, if it does work for you, but if you're asking me what I think, I wouldn't do that because it just sounds like a really small amount of food. And just doing that 1 meal a day, like your metabolism could just slow and not be, burning much. Hi from Mexico, FERMCR. Hello, I love Mexico. I miss Mexico. We used to go to Mexico a couple times a year for work and also just to visit, and I really miss it. Nutrient dense enthusiast, keto since 2018, carnivore since August 2019. I find that carnivore with keto macros works better for me. Thoughts to why that is? When I eat high protein, I get sad and crave things. I think that's totally normal. I'm known as a ketogenic girl for a reason. I believe in the keto macros, and they can really help with the body being in homeostasis, support the body thriving, and eating high fat, you're getting lots of great energy. You're moderating your protein so you know you're not overdoing it. And sometimes I do think that people do have issues if they're eating too much protein, because the body has to adapt over time, to greater amounts of protein. Breaking down protein is a really intense job for the body. That's why it has such a high thermic percentage. So you lose 30% of the calories that you eat from protein because it's so hard to break down. And that's why, that happens. So that's why protein has such a high thermic effect. It's hard to break it down. So I can see why you feel better that way, and I'm glad that you found what works for you. That's great. Keep it going. Colleen, I don't know exact macros, but pretty much a 1-to-1 ratio. Numbers are in that range all night. Thanks for explaining it. If you want to watch more, on YouTube here, there's a video I just did, a podcast episode of Dr. Don Layman. It's about an hour long, and we talk all about this, and he explains why blood glucose can be higher in the morning, and we also talk about how cortisol can be higher and blood glucose can be higher when someone is doing a higher protein approach, and why it's not a bad thing. It's just a different physiology because you're not stocking your liver full of glycogen from carbs during the day. Your body needs to make glucose because it doesn't have ready glycogen stores. So your liver has to make glucose all the time from the protein that you're eating, and it's utilizing that, and that's why it tends to be higher. Whereas someone on a high carb diet, none of us were measuring our blood glucose before keto. Like, most of the time, people who are on high carb diets, they wake up with really low blood sugar because their body used it up from the stores of glycogen throughout the night. So, the number that you wake up with can mean so many different things. Fearing like a number of 90 or 100 is really not, I think, strategic. What is strategic is paying attention to that range. Like, my blood glucose, most days I wake up and it's somewhere in the low 80s, and it does that the entire day. And when I eat, sometimes maybe it goes up by 5 points, not even. And it just stays in this like super tight range the whole day. Whereas someone who's doing a high carb diet, they're going to see like these massive spikes and falls and spikes and falls. And that's why people are always hungry, like I used to be when I did a high carb diet, because we feel hunger when our blood glucose is falling. But when it's always just in that nice tight range, your liver is just making glucose for you as you need it. It's, mostly a demand-driven process. So the liver is just making that glucose as you go along, and it takes a lot of time, to break it down. Whereas carbs are just like instant. They hit your bloodstream and their glucose, protein has to be converted into that. Stephanie, thoughts on using digestive enzymes? Is there potential this might help with histamine issues? Absolutely, it can. I really like this company. I had them on the podcast recently, called Optimizers, and they are a supporter of fast keto, and they make the most amazing digestive enzymes. They have a bunch of different ones called mass enzymes. I have them here if you guys want to see them, but there's mass enzymes, and they have one called Capex, which is specifically for people on keto, and they're full of lipases and proteases, which are the enzymes that we need to break down protein and fat. So sometimes when people first go higher protein or protein or keto and carbohydrate, or keto and carnivore, it takes some time for us to ramp up the production of those digestive enzymes to meet that change in diet. So sometimes it just takes a bit of time, and in the meantime, you can supplement with digestive enzymes to help with that. So it can just help in the interim when you're first sort of making that switch. Deborah, totally off topic. Are your nails gel or SNS? I just got them done today. I love them. They were natural for the last 2 months, and I seriously thought about just leaving them as they were, all natural, because it was kind of nice. But you always have to like mess around with them. So this is a shellac. Sometimes I just do gel polish, but this is a shellac. And I like to keep them nice and short because I don't like them getting in the way and I type a lot, but it's a shellac polish. I usually do gel polish or shellac polish, just the polish on top of my natural nail, and I keep them relatively short. They could grow long, like I've had them super, super long, but I just don't like it for typing and stuff. It's annoying and it gets like, they get caught in things. Angela, you're welcome. Linda, thank you for doing the lives. I appreciate it. I recently bought your cookbook. Are there any other cookbooks you have that I might be missing? I wonder how I make your... So the cookbook that I have is this one behind me, Keto Essentials, that you have. Thank you so much for buying it. I have been working on doing a new book, but I've also been doing my meal plans. The new ones are coming out. The Carnivore meal plans in a couple of weeks. The pre-order link is at ketogenicgirl.com, which is www.ketogenicgirl.com. I also have the Keto Carnivore plans, which I released, and the Carnivore meal plans, they do have some other things in them, like mushrooms and herbs, and sauces, but they're optional. It's just kind of the carnivore approach that I have personally, but they're optional. And I'm just finishing up the photography on them right now, and that's kind of the most time-consuming process, but I'll be posting some of the photos and recipes so you guys can see, but they're really turning out beautifully, and I'm really, really excited to release them. So thanks for asking about that, and thanks for supporting my work. It really means the world to me. Thank you. Matthew, what is your opinion on a fast versus a nutritional fast? I don't know what a nutritional fast is. I don't know if you mean like an egg fast. I always laugh at egg fast because it's basically just a carnivore diet. But I do think they have a place and a role. If the thing with egg fast though is I find a lot of people lose a lot of water weight because they don't eat as much salt and sodium. So you could easily see like a loss of 5 to 10 pounds in a week just from not salting your food because you're not retaining as much water. But then your blood pressure is going to be lower, and depending on if that's a good thing or a bad thing, you might feel like sluggish and low energy. But basically an egg fast is just like doing a clean carnivore week. But I think it can be good if you want to like reset, say you wanted to reset your sodium levels and just do like crepes, like eggs, omelets and things without salting your food for a whole week, then it would be a good way to reset your sodium. But I don't think there's really a ton of benefits other than that. Some people have digestive problems with eggs. But egg yolks are very nutritious, have a lot of B12, choline, that kind of thing. So, it's a great nutritional boost. But I don't think it's any different than just having like a regular carnivore diet, because it's just animal foods. There's also like trace carbs in eggs, whereas most meat there is also some trace glycogen. So I don't know, I'm not a big fan. If you're gonna do a fast, I would say just do a water fast. Like if you want to get the most benefits, if you want to get the most benefits, just do a water fast, because if you're water fasting, then you're going to be getting all the benefits of autophagy, and all that cellular cleanup and repair, where you don't get that if you do an egg fast. So if you're going to fast, to me, fasting is just no food at all, no liquids other than water. Like an egg fast to me is not a fast, it's just an eating. A week of eating lots of eggs. But yeah, it's basically just, Stephanie, can you further explain a sodium reset? Yeah, so a lot of people are confused about electrolytes on keto and carnivore. I'm one of them. I'm always learning and doing research myself. I'm constantly learning about electrolytes, but one of the things that I do see happens a lot is people start to willy-nilly like add all these electrolytes in, and the best way, in my opinion, to gauge your electrolytes is just to go by your tongue. So if you are like, say you're eating food during the day, put a couple teaspoons of salt in a little container and salt your food during the day just to taste. Salt your food as you're cooking it, salt it as to taste, because that's how you're going to be able to gauge with that feedback, because you're balancing out the potassium that's in, say, beef. There's lots of potassium in beef, in salmon, like in animal products, there's potassium. Adding sodium, you're balancing out the sodium and potassium in there. There's also sodium in those foods, but you're balancing it out, and that's why it tastes good. But when you start adding then like salt to water, that always tastes too salty to me. So there's got to be a reason for that. Like, why does it taste too salty, but it doesn't taste too salty when you add it to food? Because you're not in the proper ratios anymore. So then people start adding potassium in, which the body doesn't absorb. So you're adding potassium, you're adding sodium, and it's like you're just going all out of whack. And I think that that's when people start to have like weird things like, edema, water retention, all kinds of different uncomfortable symptoms, because you're not letting you're forcing your body to do extra work. You're forcing your kidneys to do extra work in excreting all this added sodium, potassium in that you don't need. But the times that I do think that people should be adding sodium, especially, is like on a fast, when you're not getting any sodium, potassium in from your food. If you're doing a lot of exercise, you're an athlete, and you're constantly sweating and losing electrolytes. If you have constipation, then that can be because you don't have enough salt or sodium, because our bowels need sodium. But virtually every cell in our body needs sodium. But that can be an indicator that maybe you're not getting enough either. Usually it's sodium or fat in a diet. But it's if you follow my logic, people just throw off the ratios when they just start adding stuff in at their own levels. Like, I'm adding a teaspoon of that and a dash of this, when we really should just be gauging it by our taste. So if you do a sodium reset, like for a week, say you did an egg fast and you didn't add sodium all week, you just ate the eggs naturally, or you did a water fast for like 3 days or something, then you're in that time, you're resetting your sodium. People lose a lot of weight because they're not adding sodium, so they drop a lot of water. And you just kind of reset things back to zero, so then you can start salting your food again to taste, and your palate's going to be really, really tuned in instinctually to what you need. So it's just kind of my own theory on electrolytes, and it's just based on research that I've done in different areas, but it's just a theory. It's not like something that you can go and read about, but it's what I have found for myself and seeing other people. All right. Let's see what the next question is here. Yeah, let me know if you do try it. Absolutely. Okay. I'm just scrolling up for a second. Hi, and greetings from Poland. Hello. I'm just south of you here in Prague. Okay. Priya E says, when I did 5 days fast a few months back, on the 5th day I had severe back pain. Will salt, water, etc. work to avoid this pain from multiple day water only fasting? It happens all the time. I used to get back pain on extended fast as well, and I would go on fasting forums online, and it's a really, really common thing that people have back pain, but I don't remember why. It could be related to the kidneys maybe, because if it's like in the lower back, which is where your kidneys are, but I think that it's very, very common. I've had it, I did have it a couple of times, and then I didn't have it after that. So I'm not sure what you could do to avoid it, but I would think that if it is happening, it's the body telling you something. But I know from my own personal experience that it did happen and then it didn't after. So I don't know if my body repaired or what it is, but I don't know of anything that you could do to avoid it, because I'm not sure what exactly it is that's causing it. But I do know that 5-day water fasts are so healing and restorative, because you're doing all that cellular cleansing, taking the recycling out, taking the garbage out in your cells. And I think that, there's probably all kinds of things that are going to pop up, like skin issues and pain in different areas, because the body is healing when you're letting it rest from all that digestion, and you're just letting it rest and heal and take care of itself. So I wish I could tell you what you could do to actually avoid that next time, but yeah, I hope that helps in some way. Katrina, the running community tends to be very high carb, heavy in their nutrition. Do you have any tips for keto and carnivore running? Yeah, so keto and carnivore should be absolutely great for long distance running, because your fat oxidation is the primary, your fat is the primary fuel for that kind of long-term aerobic exercise. So it can be really, really great for long distance running. I know that if the running is like sprinting and short distances, then I know that having some carbs can really help with that. But the best person to follow, with regards to that, is Zach Bitter. I had him on the podcast. We did a whole episode talking about running and keto and carnivore. If you want to look up that episode of Fast Keto with Zach Bitter, or you can follow him and send him questions. He's super, super friendly and loves to answer questions. But he talks pretty in depth on that episode about how he did it exactly, and how he strategically uses carbs. And he's a world record holder, and just recently won those world records again. So he'd be the ultimate person to ask on that. But for long distance, long duration endurance running, keto and carnivore are excellent, because it is aerobic exercise. You're burning body fat. So if you're a fat burner and you've made your body a fat burner and good at burning fat, then you're going to do really well on that. But the key really is making sure that you have your electrolytes on point, because you're going to be losing a lot of electrolytes from doing all of that sweating and stuff. So I think that's probably the main thing that needs to be there. And the same goes for when someone is doing keto, and feeling like sluggish or tired or lethargic. It's usually sodium, low sodium, or electrolytes being off. So I'm going to take the last question here. It's been almost an hour, so I got to head off and make dinner for us. But Elmare, what is your take on chewing gum between meals? Does that count as snacking? I think it does, because most of those chewing gums are going to have sweeteners in them, and so there's a cephalic phase insulin response, which, although it's not necessarily going to have a ton of calories in it, again, you're keeping your body in the fed state. And that's my issue with sweeteners, is even though they don't have calories in them, they're signaling to the body that you're in energy storage mode. And in order to be able to access our stored energy, we have to go into that post-absorptive state, which is the fasted state. And we do that by signaling to the body that it's time to break down stored energy. And the only way to do that is to not be like tasting things and drinking things and doing all of that, because that is what is going to tell the body that it's time to actually break down all that stored energy and utilize it for fuel. So, well, guys, it was really great being here with you for the last hour. That really flew by, which means I had a fabulous time with all of you. So thank you so much for joining me, for being here, for your fabulous brilliant questions. I loved them. They were all so interesting, and every question was a little different. So I really hope that they were helpful for you guys, and look forward to being here again with you in the future and doing more lives. And until the next one, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the Fast Keto podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, because it helps me be able to put out more content like this. And if you ever have a moment, leave me a rating or review over on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts for the Fast Keto podcast. All right, guys, have a fat-filled rest of your day, and bye for now. Thanks for watching.